Hey, hi everybody. We're continuing our Designing for Music series, which is named after a book that Judith and I did in 1992. I want to show something from that book, which Emek Artman, who we're interviewing today, one of the great rock poster artists, would relate to. And it's on our dedication page. It's a poster by Rick Griffin. And after seeing some background on Emmick, I know he was influenced by such artists like Rick. And also, Judith and I did a two-book Swag 1 and 2 series. And I remember starting the book, and I was in touch with Frank Kozik, another great rock poster artist. And he said, there are certain names, Spencer, you got to put in the book. And one of those was Emek Artman. And exposing myself to his work was amazing. He is really phenomenal. He's very conceptual, very detailed artist, and he's very prolific. He's done so many rock posters, it's unbelievable. And he became the cover of our book, which Emmick did, and it actually folded out. It actually folded out into a great piece of art. And Emmick did that. Judith did the back cover of the book, and we did a spread inside with some of Emmick's posters, which is just a fragment of his life. You know what I mean? I mean, this is just so. Let me get right into it. Let's get right into Emek Artman. And hi, Emmick.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, very, very. This is a great interview today. I'm looking forward to this. Tell us from the beginning a little bit of your life and what are some of your influences and so forth.
Well, right off the bat, I would have to say that my parents are a huge influence on me. Growing up, my mom and my dad are both artists, and so we spent I spent a lot of time in my parents' art studio. So did my brother and my sister. We're all professional artists, and I would watch my dad paint and my mom draw and do printmaking and welding, uh, stone lithography, etching, kinetic sculpting, um, everything you can think of. We grew up doing it. So somehow along the way, I found a way to combine my passion for music uh, with art, and I've been making rock and roll posters for almost 30 years now.
Wow. And
Yeah.
uh, and tell us about you're a very detailed artist. I mean, you go beyond a certain way with your art. Can you describe what you do with your art or your approach to it?
Yeah. I like to draw. I've always liked to draw. It used to get me in trouble when I should have been taking notes in school. I was always drawing in the margins of all my textbooks, notebooks, and everything else. And just, I guess my dad's work is very detailed, and also a lot of the artwork that used to be in my dad's studio that he would keep for reference, old woodcut engravings and Renaissance etchings and things like that. So that kind of just has always been my style. I can't. I'm afraid of empty space, I guess.
Hmm. Wow. And you've done some phenomenal work. I mean, hopefully we could show some of this work on here, which we will.
I have a lot of work. I've
I
done
know.
over 1,000 rock posters,
Wow.
um, which is one every few weeks for the last couple decades, except for this year. This year was kind of like non-existent for that.
And a phenomenal list of groups you've worked for, right? I mean, the list is endless. Weezer and I don't know, it goes endless.
Neil Young, Pearl Jam, Beastie Boys,
Yeah, yeah.
Coachella Festival, official artwork every year. Um, yeah, a lot.
You have any stories you can tell us?
So back in the 90s, I was doing flyers. Well, it all came from I had friends in bands making music, and I started doing flyers for them. And then those little flyers, once I collected a body of work, I started showing them to clubs saying, hey, if you have any cool bands coming through and you need promotional work. And once I collected those, then I started going to record companies and making a portfolio and going to Kinko's in the middle of the night and seeing Rob Zombie was also there making copies for his band. And,
Wow.
you know, we'd have like this late night Hollywood Kinko's crew of different people, musicians and artists, all trying to do our thing. This was early 90s. And there was a moment where I was doing more like punk rock stuff. And then by coincidence, because I always idolized the 60s artists, Stanley Mouse, the legendary Mouse, was offered a job to do an album cover for Neil Young and Pearl Jam. And for whatever reason, he wasn't able to do it. And I did the classic move that so many artists hate, which is, I'm the young guy, I'll do it cheaper.
Right.
And so I ended up doing an album cover for that, Mirror Ball. And I had to do it in like one day, I think, because, you know, they have so much time to record the album. And then when it comes time to like putting it out, it's like, well, you know, they look for different artists and whatever. And by the time they ended up with me, the deadline was very short. And this was before computers. So I hand painted everything. You know, the lettering, everything all on one piece of illustration board. And then it was great. It was fun. But it led to a lot of other jobs within a certain genre of like the Horde Festival and Black Crowes and Blues Traveler and more of these like Grateful Dead or hippie type bands or 60s bands. Yeah. And so I went from being a punk rock artist to then trying to get work in the music that I more identified with, and people telling me, oh, you're just the hippie artist, you know? So it's kind of like being typecast in a profession that I was still trying to break into. And I always kind of got a chuckle out of that. Like, that's not all I do. But a lot of art directors were like, well, you know, you're that guy. So it took a little while to kind of find my footing, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, and you've worked with have you worked with, I think I saw your interview with Moscoso. Victor Moscoso is one of my favorites.
Well, I mean, okay, so a lot of these legends from the 60s, they're a huge influence on me. And my dad had a lot of old rock posters and World War II propaganda posters in his studio. So I grew up kind of seeing the artwork and not really understanding exactly what I was looking at, but it was a huge influence to see text and art incorporated together. And Moscoso's colors, of course, he were amazing. And the detail of Rick Griffin and the collage work of Kelly and Mouse and just, you know, so much variety. And I think the way I absorbed so much of it was my parents would always take us to galleries and museums, and my brother and sister and we would see artwork that we liked in the museum, and then we'd come home and kind of replicate it with our own twist. So I was always inspired by the 60s artists, but then I'm like, how can I do my little twist on it? So yeah, I mean, I've been able to collaborate and on art projects with Mouse and be in art shows with Moscoso and other legends and meet them, of course, many times over the years.
Yeah, I also noticed, and I think you mentioned one of your interviews about being on the quote dark side a little bit in your work. I noticed that with skeletons and things like that. I love it. Talk about that.
So for me, it's a question of mortality, but also mechanics. When I found out at an early age that there's a skeleton inside all of us, even as we're talking and socializing, and then that's all that's left after we're gone. Something about that aspect and what a skeleton represents. It's not so much the blood and the guts of it. It's just like the mechanics and how things work and musculature and, you know, and then just the whole medium of a rock and roll poster is kind of this temporary, ephemeral, almost like just throwaway work. And then, here are all these artists that are trying to add a sense of permanence or an illusion, to make it last, to make it worthy of lasting when the expiration date is printed like right on the artwork.
Mm-hmm.
So skeletons, it's just a fascination with mechanics and mortality, and then also kind of the dark side of the impending state of affairs, I guess. Social issues and politics and war and death and all the good stuff that makes for interesting art, in my opinion.
There's a poster where you have like it's almost like from a Native American poster with a cowboy on a horse.
Right.
That really intrigued me, the image,
Thank you. The Flaming Lips it was for a poster for the Flaming Lips, and they're from Oklahoma, and there's a giant statue there called the End of the Trail.
Oh, wow.
And so I did kind of my riff on it, which is a robot horse and a robot indigenous American, and they're built from spare parts and scrap, and they, you could see that they're battle scarred and bruised, but in his medicine bag, he's got, so the landscape is all devastated and deforested and a wasteland, but in his medicine bag, he's got a seed growing like a new tree. So there's always like a glimmer of hope, even in like the dark art, because they, got to persevere.
Yeah. I was wondering if you could talk about some of your posters. You've done so many, but maybe some of them with little stories. Oh, yeah, that's my favorite. It's my book.
Yeah.
Judith and I did. Yeah. That's the, you did this poster for CBGB Gallery, which I think you're holding. That's an amazing poster.
Yeah. So the Copper Tone Girl finally gets her revenge on the sexist dog. She's blasting him with a Mars Attack laser.
I remember you sent me one image that was okay, but then you sent me the knockout image after that one. It was like, it blew my mind away, actually.
Thanks. Yeah. So a lot of my work is based on riffing off of, pop culture in a way.
Yeah.
But what I also discovered over the years after drawing countless posters, a lot of times the bands would say, oh, we only want 200 posters for this event, or 100 posters. Sometimes they want 1,000. A lot of times they want smaller edition to make it exclusive for some of the smaller venues, or make it collectible, or whatever, or their budget, whatever the reason is. So I thought, okay, I grew up in my dad's art studio. I got exposed to all different types of printmaking and fabrication, and how can we make something that's mass produced but still a limited edition? So if the band only wanted a finite amount for a show, then I thought, like I can start printing on foil paper.
Oh, wow. Perfect.
So, and then, like doing laser cut stuff.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So, as long as the bands really just care, as long as the name of the band is spelled correctly, the show information is there, and the visual appeals to the fan base, which is really why I chose to do rock posters, where a lot of my other friends went to work for Disney or advertising and in other more corporate fields. With rock posters, there's so much freedom because the bands just say, do something our fan base will like. And then, I could play around with so much variety. Like this was for a show in Los Angeles. So I thought, why not print it on film?
Oh,
it's
wow.
like a film strip.
Right.
And it's like a dog-eat-dog world, So, but all the information is there.
Am I seeing 9 Inch Nails?
Yeah. So this was for a 9 Inch Nails show.
Yeah.
And
like
this particular artwork, they want maybe like 300, 500. So that's an easier piece to mass produce. Again, like
Oh yeah.
laser
Wow.
cut. You can, I've done, tons of these, like, how can we take a rock poster that still honors what a rock poster needs to do and yet make it like crazy, I guess, in a way.
One of the questions that is often asked too of the design process is when it relates to the album covers. And Spencer, you and I were just talking about this, about, do you listen to the album first if it's the album cover?
Oh yeah.
You're Emmick, working in the realm though of the live shows, the performances. There, the sort of live feel of the artist, your artist client, that informs your interpretation of what you want to do for them. The energy of their live show.
Oh, well, personally for me, that's very important. I love the mythology that it's a tribal gathering, that whatever our differences are, we have a sense of this community and this communal nature of coming to see a show, enjoying it, feeling the vibe of the band on stage and the audience. And I always like to be in front of the stage and just really in the thick of it to really feel it. And I always go to bed listening to the band's music, and I tell myself to have a dream about it. And that's how I get my ideas. In my family, it was kind of a normal thing to do. Like, have the visual in your sleep, it's like working a double shift or letting your subconscious take over. So I'd like to think that the music inspires me to come up with the idea, because again, like for me, the concept is the most important part. And once I have the idea, then I figure out, do I want to do it in a more Russian constructivist style, in a more 60s psychedelic style, but it has to start with the concept and the idea. And that's always triggered by the music. By the time I'm done with the project, maybe it's a little bit more removed to some people. Other people are like, yeah, man, that's how I feel when I see a show or something. But yeah, so music, of course, is a very big part of my life. And so, yeah, it's a big influence. Sometimes there's a certain song that's popular or a lyric or something, but there's always a catalyst.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up something that I usually talk to Patrick about. We're in line with this, and also Zach Martin, who couldn't be on the show, but he's the. I want to say thanks to Zach because he's the leader in this whole new HTTV series, and Patrick's a big part of it with me. I want to bring that in here so we all know that. Typography, I always believe that typography, and with Judith and I, that's a big thing with us. Good typography with the art or photography. I noticed that your work is exceptional, bringing the type area together with the artwork. That's big time. And you're always on a quality line with that type area. Could you talk to us about that? Because that's a big thing. You've got to have type and the visual together in order to make a great piece.
Yeah, so growing up again in my dad's art studio for years and watching or looking at his reference materials of all of these projects that had type in it, and I will sit there and I will, obsess over and over about
wow, yeah,
different ways to draw a font. So I have millions.
Wow.
Well, not millions, of course, but
about that.
And then like here are some.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Like this was an early draft that I did for the Black Crowes. I just wanted something psychedelic and crazy.
Yeah.
And then it appeared on a poster that I did for them. And then they liked it so much that it became their logo when they went on tour for a while. Same thing happened like with so this is the original poster.
Wow.
Very Muka inspired.
Yeah.
And there's a story behind every poster. And we could get into that or not, but like this was a poster I did for Henry Rollins, and he liked it so much that he said, I want it to be my world tour image and my CD cover and my album cover, and then it became also his font or his logo for a while. You know, but it was originally just done for one show poster. So yeah, I mean, I'm always drawn to the live music, and yeah, I play a lot with type. Like this is just a friend's band.
Oh,
you know,
great!
just
Wow.
Playing around with variety. But I have hundreds and hundreds of these things.
I mean that separates you a little bit from some of the other rock poster artists, because a lot of them are really great at doing their artwork, but they don't have the integration of good type or lettering. You know, seriously. So that you're one of the few in that group, I'm sure, that have that great combination, and that makes your work exceptional in my book. You know,
Well,
on the quality line.
thank you. Of course, the other problem that I have is a lot of times I approach a poster as something like, my criteria is I want it to look good on hanging on my own wall. So when I get the idea, a lot of times what happens is I'll start to draw it, and then sometimes I'm like, oh no, the type's gonna encroach too much on the art. So I also have a tendency to like push the text away. So sometimes it's more incorporated, and a lot of times it's just like, I just want it to be an art piece with, so, it's always hindsight is 2020. Like I look back and I say, oh, the piece would have worked much better if I, didn't try to, focus so much on the illustration part of it.
So let's look at this piece here, for instance, Cold, CBGBs. That's a beautiful piece there. Any story behind that?
That was during a phase when I was very into Grey's Anatomy, and like the book, not the TV show. Just anatomical studies, and the lead singer had a tattoo of a spider on his head, and I just wanted to look like something really old, but I don't know, wild, I guess.
And then this, there's a little bit of couple here. There's Blues Travelers, the Marilyn Manson album, and
right. So for Blues Traveler, it was pretty literal. It's just a giant blue traveler through the desert, and he's heading towards like a dystopian city that's got giant syringes and all these things coming out of it. All the troubles of modern civilization, but he's sowing the seeds of music as he's traveling. So behind him is all this greenery, like Johnny Appleseed or something. So it's pretty literal, Blues Traveler. And Marilyn Manson, he had a prosthetic at the time that gave him breasts. And so I thought, why not take it a step further and also make him pregnant with a baby Marilyn and a baby Manson? So it's like an anatomy chart showing all like song lyrics, music lyrics.
and a fish.
Yeah, that was an early 90s piece. Jerry Garcia had just passed away. I hid a little picture of Jerry in the clouds in the background there. And it's just like a giant wild fish. And there's like a boat full of like these corporate suitcase executives, and they're trying to tame and harpoon the fish with these dollar sign tridents, and the fish is overturning their boat because, you can't contain the energy and the spirit of, DIY culture and,
How about the one above it? That's a wild one.
Yeah, that one's called Some Bands Suck and Some Bands Will Suck Your Heart Out. And it's just a badass female robot holding a human heart with some cool bands that put on a crazy show. I mean, the Butthole Surfers.
Yeah.
I've seen some crazy shows of theirs. It's good times.
They're a crazy group.
Yeah. Good times, though.
What you do is you have control. You pick what you want. That's always the ideal of any artist or designer. You're creating your piece. There's nobody looking over your shoulders, and what comes out is what comes out. So that's a great thing to have in your life as an artist, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like a challenge. Like, what can I do next? What hasn't been done? And then if I get the idea, then it's like, oh, I better do something because it's out there in the ether. So if I thought of it, someone else can think of it. So I better, make it happen. So I had this idea, like, has a poster ever, like, ZZ Top. So this is made with branding irons. Again, it's like, well, if a band only needs 150 posters for a show, there's a way to still mass produce it in a sense, and but still a limited edition. So this, I called different branding iron companies around the country to say, can you do something like this? And most of them laughed at me, but I found a company that worked with me, and I made a bunch of branding irons and sat there, made a giant fire pit, and sat there and branded 150. I had to call a furniture store to find panels of wood at a reasonable price. And
wow.
So the challenge of it is what makes it fun. Like here's a poster that actually has a real spinner on it. Because again, they only needed 150, and then they decided that they wanted more. So what we did was we just made a regular poster for a few hundred more, but then, there's a VIP edition or whatnot. Here's a poster printed on this really crazy, it also glows in the dark.
Wow.
But it's this weird lenticular paper.
Oh, that's incredible. Yeah.
And then to give you a sense, this is the original black and white drawing.
Yeah. Wow. Beautiful.
But then, it gets printed on this funky stuff.
So how much did you print on that? How much of a run do you do on that?
Maybe 300. Every job is different. So sometimes a band will say, well, we want 100 really special, and then 500 same image but printed, more viably commercial. Okay, so here's an original ink.
Oh wow!
For an album cover.
Ah, that was an album cover?
Yeah.
Wow. When was that done? When was the album done?
Oh, boy.
A while ago?
Yeah, probably 10 years ago.
Nice cover. Beautiful.
They were nominated or they won a couple of Grammys perhaps or something.
Wow.
Here's another medium I like to work in. This is original. This is scratchboard.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful. Wow. Beautiful.
So, and then here's just a little handbill. So sometimes the band wants the big posters, but then they also want a few smaller versions as well. Another original ink, for a festival. So this one,
wow.
I was I wanted to make it really hard for flippers, which are people that go to the shows just to buy the posters and then sell them on eBay for a really high price. So I say, all right, this one, they'll sell it at the show, but it's going to be really hard for people who are not actually interested in it to try to sell it.
One of the interesting things, as you discuss the influence your parents as artists had on you, did that help you, give you an advantage, I guess, just in terms of experience and seeing how you could make art as a career, and then also prepare you for all of the details that you're speaking of here of different materials and how you're able to go from concept to execution because it was something that your parents were doing and an environment you grew up in?
Well, for the first part, of your question, my parents said, art's in your blood. Your brother's an artist, your sister's an artist. Do it because you love it, but don't do it as a career. Don't do it as a profession. Like when my dad sold a painting, we had food on the table. And when times were tough, we had a vegetable garden and chickens. So they said, and growing up, I remember that, it was a struggle. So they said, don't be an artist, learn a profession, something that you can actually make, survive at. But it didn't work because we are still all artists. And, but yes, to answer the second part, my parents were fine artists, so it wasn't about the commercial aspect. So it wasn't about necessarily, how to make money. It was like following your passion. However, because I like music so much, and I always wanted to make graphics for my friends' bands and then later music that I liked, growing up in an art studio and learning how to fabricate and work with all kinds of materials definitely was, it created this, like, what can I come up with next? Like this hunger just to do crazy stuff. And it's like, it wasn't so much, again, about like the budget. Like a band would only have so much budget. And I'm like, well, I want to do this anyways. And then, of course, my family looked at me like I'm crazy, like you're going to lose money. It's like, but it doesn't matter because I don't want to pinch pennies. I can make money on the next job. But this job, I have a vision. I have to follow it. This is what I want to do. It hasn't been done. So I got to do the research, call all kinds of dentists' office to see how they get molds made and what kind of plastics they use, not for that, not because I need it for a dental project, but because that was my experience of seeing it. Like, okay, I know that they use plastics and molds. So start from there, call around the country, find companies that I can get stuff from at an affordable price, make, crazy rock posters, like, using crazy materials that I grew up with, I guess.
That makes you a great creative artist. Using the tools and and you're really good at concepts. That's the other thing, conceptual. When we do an album cover, Judith and I, we think of a concept and hopefully it's a good one. You have a lot of great concepts on your work. It comes out,
Thank you. Again, I'm inspired by the music. So that's kind of, what leads me.
Just to your point, Spencer, about concepts, I guess the passion that you have for the art and your commitment to it, does that give you the courage of your concepts to take those risks and to, have your creativity drive the concept primarily rather than the commercial aspect? Absolutely.
Like my parents said, if you're doing any kind of art for the money, then you're not doing it for the right reasons. I've been very fortunate, but it was always driven about, the drive was always getting an idea. And then once that idea is in my head, it's like, that's all I can hyper focus on. It's like, I got to make it happen. And then of course the deadlines are tighter and tighter. Like I did a VIP poster for Velvet Revolver with Slash. And I had an idea to print the poster on red velvet. So I started calling fabric companies and experimenting with different fabrics.
Wow.
And then finally I found a place that had what I needed, but it was in India and it would take 2 months to get here. Yeah. And then there was a storm at sea and I'm watching the tracking, like I need that fabric, the clock is ticking. And, the difference is like, you have to have a certain amount of starch in the fabric. So it doesn't, when you're printing on it, it doesn't stretch too much.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's a lot. So many times it's these crazy ideas, and then it's always down to the last second.
Did you ever print with metallics?
Yeah. Oh, well, that's what I love about screen printing.
Yeah.
Silk screening is you can print fluorescence, you can print metallics,
right.
You can print glow in the dark. You can print like flocking and glitter. And again, like being a poster artist allows me to be a one-man band where I come up with the idea, I do the sketches, I get them approved by the band, I do the artwork, I do the color separation. I no longer do my own printing, but I grew up learning how to screen print in my dad's art studio. So yeah, playing around with all of the options was what makes it great.
Yeah, Judith and I did this amazing 5-color, four metallic and black brochure, which was phenomenal. The printer wanted to do it just because to do it.
Right.
But we had a problem with the 4 metallics. It's a very touchy area with metallics, so budding things together. It worked out, but I was on the press for 4 days with that one.
Yes.
But metallic area is very touchy. But I remember as a kid in college, I would have what you're talking about, the silkscreen posters of Sopwith Camel or Jefferson Airplane, you know, and the silkscreen posters had that vibrancy. They had that fluorescent thing.
Yeah.
And of course you had the green, in those days you had the lights, the
black lights.
Yeah. Right. So you're bringing back a lot of the tradition in that area, believe it or not, I think, you know?
Yeah. In fact, I grew up by actually, when I first started doing screen printing, not in my dad's studio, but trying to do it more professionally, I was watching Victor Moscoso's work and how he did all the color separating for his work. And that's how I did my work for the first decade. And you're basically working in layers of black and white and red. And you're kind of trying to imagine, well, this is the layer that I want to print gold, and this is the layer I want fluorescent green, and this is the layer I want yellow and red and purple, whatever you want, glow in the dark. But when you're creating the art, you're doing it all in black and white and just like layers of tracing paper, and you don't even know how it's going to look until it's finally all printed, all the colors. And then you're like, oh, I should have, made this change or that change, but yeah. When you first said if I worked with metallics, I thought you were going to say Metallica.
Go ahead.
This is a limited edition poster printed on metal. So
really?
Kind of fun and wild.
You see, this is what's interesting. And, we've done like a metal box for Lou Reed and a peel up banana thing with velvet. And I always saw Metallica. They never had a metal box. And I said to myself, all these years, Metallica, right? Emmick, no metal at all used in any of their CDs, and they had the money for special packaging. They never did. I'm so glad to see you did something in metal for Metallica.
I know, right? It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, right. You think, right? That's great. Is there anything you want to add? Are you working on anything now in your life that's coming up?
Well, so this time last year, I pretty much saw all of my calendar disappear. Like I had finished the artwork for the Coachella Festival. I had done artwork for the Who tour of Europe. I had done smaller bands, but I had about 4 projects that were finished. And then I had a calendar because I can only draw so fast. So I know like if I finish a poster every 3 weeks, and this is pretty much how I lived my life for the last 30 years, deadline to deadline to deadline, like I want to make 16 posters a year, 18 posters a year, whatever it is. So it's nonstop work. And then all of a sudden in March, they're like, okay, this is canceled. And then I was like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
So this year, at first it was like, how do I learn to enjoy not working? Because I do love my work so much. It really brings me comfort, whatever, Zen and, just drawing and being around art is something I've always done and grown up with. So the transition was a little scary. But then, I just said, on the one hand, I have almost 30 years of images to pull from if I wanted to just make fine art pieces, which is basically taking the band name off and, selling limited editions of just art pieces with my art. And then there was a really big response to it. A lot of people are like, oh, my wife won't let me hang it because she doesn't like this band, but as an art piece, we can put it in our home now. so I did that, and then I've also just been making new, again, art pieces that are not for anyone, but just some stuff, wild stuff that comes out of my head.
Yeah. So, and let me ask you a question. Let's talk about computer and traditional. You work both ways, right? With the computer
Yes.
and
Yeah.
without, yeah, both ways.
I wouldn't take my horse and buggy on the freeway. So yeah, you gotta work with the times.
Yeah, yeah.
But you still have to have your own like personality or voice. So
Do you find with to build on Spencer's question of the computer, the technical side versus the digital side of creation versus the mechanical and the hand crafted side of that, does that do you have a sort of different feel in terms of your creative impulse between the technologies? Do you feel more comfort in the mechanical aspect versus the digital aspect? Do you find different limitations because of the technology? What's your preference there?
Yeah.
There's always a learning curve, but for me, that learning curve happened a decade ago. I think it's pretty seamless now, as far as being able to integrate and go back and forth. Again, but it's only within my own capacity of what I like to do. So if I learn something new and I want to push myself there, that's different. But a lot of my ideas are based more in traditional low-tech kind of styles and concepts. So it's not like I'm going to go learn how to do 3D computer rendering or anything like that. But as far as doing what I want to do, being able to use Photoshop and tools to add color and stuff it's great. I can get a lot more detail and I can speed up. I mean, I still always work down to the last second, no matter what the deadline is. But yeah, technology is great.
It's interesting to me though too, because in it seeing your posters and through your descriptions of the stories that you tell, that each poster tells, my sense all along through this interview is that there's not a big gap between the works you're creating as a commercial end for these artists, but that it's really fine art. And, so to the point you raised about taking the band logo off and then that can hang on the wall as a piece of fine art, that's really the essence of what you've been creating all along.
Yeah. There's been projects where yeah. I mean, sometimes it's like, I could use this piece in the future as fine art if I did less text on it, but then it's like, well, no, because really my passion is rock posters. And so that comes first and foremost. And so, like I was doing these metal embossed posters for this one particular show for the Foo Fighters with Motorhead, and it had like a particular date at the bottom. And, I was calling around all these metal stamping places, and they're like, if you print the dates on the bottom, then you can make a certain amount that is just the artwork part, and then you can have the date part printed on some of them, but then you can have these art pieces that you could also sell that are unrelated.
Right.
Plus, it'll cost you more if we have to make the embossing stamps for the text and everything else. And I said, no, because it's done for it to be a rock poster. So I'm going to have it all done on one plate because that's why I'm doing it. So, yeah, I mean, maybe a lot of my work could lend itself to being just fine art or art for some people who like that kind of weird stuff. But really, it's my passion is music, posters, and what can be done that's not just another flat poster.
Right.
When the artists are Foo Fighters and Motorhead, that's pretty fine no matter what you do. So
yeah. Oh no, I mean, like the reason I got into it years ago is so that I could go backstage and hang out with the band and see the shows.
You know, it's funny. It's like what you're saying, Patrick. It's like when I look at his posters, you don't have any discrepancy. It's like, like, oh, that's Pearl Jam or that's Weezer and it's not, it's not them. No, 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 no. It's them. Whenever I see a poster with any name on it that he's done, it's like you get the feeling that that is the group. And that is amazing. It's almost like you don't have to listen to the music, just I don't know. I mean, in some way, it's like you create this thing. Whatever you do for whatever group you do, I love what I see. What you do with that group, you know what I mean. There's no question. It's disoriented or anything from that group.
Well, I have to also remind people I don't just do skulls. I mean, I love skulls,
right.
but I do more than that.
Oh yeah, much more. I think we're ready to go. I want to thank Patrick, as usual, my cohort, friend on the range, and Zach. Hello, Zach, wherever you are. We miss you. And to my partner, Judith, as always, my design glue, who really designed these rock poster books beautifully that we did a two-volume series on swag. And, of course, Emmick was a big part of. I want to thank you. And Art Chantry, who did the introduction to the first book. And we know Art Chantry, right?
He did an introduction to my book as well. So
oh, really?
Shout out to
Art. Right. Good. Yeah, tell us about your book before we leave. Tell us about that book.
Glow in the dark cover. So it's actually very, we shopped around for different glow in the dark companies to find one that glows really well. 300 pages, just history of, it's got some font work, lettering, lots and lots of rock posters.
So who put that out and when was it published?
This book is actually 10 years old now. It's Ginkgo Press.
Okay.
So they do, they put out a lot of cool art books. I have a new book coming out, but it's probably closer to Christmas.
So tell us about it. Can you tell us a title or something to look for?
It's just Emek Art Book 2. It's a continuation of just, my wild and crazy doodles and sketches and people who've gotten tattoos of my artwork over the years. Just my artwork in all different forms, mostly rock posters, but a lot of other stuff in there too.
And who's publishing that?
Probably Ginkgo Press. If there's still book companies out there by the end of the year.
Yeah. I know Ginkgo. They do some cutting edge stuff. Ginkgo through the years. Yeah. Anyway, Emmick. Thanks for being on.
Thank you guys so much.
You're one of the great ones in our life. So we always Judith says hello, of course, and you're on the series.